Back or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France24 debate. And we're talking on the day after an historic announcement of the election of a president in Nigeria who is not from the ruling party, a change in ruling parties, a first for Africa's most populous nation, the man who will be returning to the executive office is one-time military strongman Muhammadu Buhari. With us to talk about it from Abuja, Hussaini Abdu, country director for ActionAid, part of the Situations Room poll monitoring umbrella group of different aid organizations and NGOs. Also with us, political scientist Emmanuel Iga, businessman Mike Olajide. We're also in the company of Julia Wono of Internet Without Borders, and entrepreneur Prince Randy Kosu Alam-Sogan, founder of Black Lion Holdings. We were talking, Emmanuel Iga was saying just before the break, how renewed faith in institutions could be one of the windfalls of the outcome of this election, as citizens recalled the ballot stuffing of elections past.
I am very, very, very happy. Very, very happy because, you know, this election made me to understand that all that I went through trying to ensure that I cast my vote, all the effort was never a wasted one. At least we begin to believe that whenever election comes up and we struggle to vote, our votes can be counted and our choice can no longer be taken for granted. So I'm just very, very happy for that.
He's very, very happy. Let's cross to Lagos and correspondent Anna Cunningham. Those are words you've heard quite a bit this Wednesday.
Yeah, it certainly is. I'll just tell you one story about a man that I met earlier today. He's working on one of the many building sites that there are in this mega city of Lagos. And he was just taking a break. He was sat by the side of the road in the sweltering midday sun with his hard hat on. There was sweat dripping down his face. He was waiting to try and get a snack, some donuts that were cooking in a big pot just nearby. And he looked up and he said, "I'm really happy." He said, "I can honestly tell you that this is the first time in my entire life that my vote has counted." He said that he voted for the general, is what he said, and he was just smiling all the time. It was like he had to keep repeating it. He couldn't quite believe it himself. But I think that is something that's reflected across Lagos, which, of course, Lagos State did go to the APC. And just another anecdote from somebody that I met today. He said, "Look, this is our Obama moment," is how he described it. He said, "We have been waiting for change for a long time, and finally it has come."
All right, I hate to spoil the party, Anna, but there's now the difficult task of running Nigeria that still lies ahead. And actually, there's a prelude to that, because the inauguration is not till May the 29th, and that's uncharted territory, is it not, this wait for this handover?
Yeah, Nigeria has never been here before, so we really can't predict exactly what is going to happen, but we know what's supposed to happen. It's this period of transition, 2 months of transition, where the APC party, Muhammadu Buhari, will form his government, will perhaps get an indication as to exactly who is going to be in his government and a clearer idea of how things are going to work. The idea is that he will work with Goodluck Jonathan for that handover to be as smooth as possible. But as you said, a lot of hard work ahead of them, big challenges, whether we're talking about the economy, we're talking about the security situation up in the northeast, because, Boko Haram may have gone quiet over the past few days, but they certainly haven't disappeared completely. So there's some big challenges ahead before they actually get into power, and May the 29th is when the inauguration will be.
All right, many thanks, Anna Cunningham, for joining us from Lagos. Let's go to the capital, Abuja, and say hello again to Hussaini Abdu. We're talking about power. Actually, a lot of voters, top of their minds is not Boko Haram, but having electricity.
Absolutely. A lot of voters have shown tremendous concern about the state of infrastructure the deepening poverty in the country, the challenges of insecurity in the country, and the level of corruption, which has been so deeply unprecedented. I think what is not coming out from this conversation is actually the role of citizens and citizens group in actually getting the politicians to play to the game. Why we are having this kind of election is not a day affair. It is something that has long been invested by civil society and the kind of work we have had with the Electoral Commission, providing unprecedented support to the Commission to stand on its ground and remain independent. I think if there is anything that has contributed to the successes that we have attained so far, is the resolve of Nigerian citizens, is the resolve of Nigerian citizens group like the civil society, and the resolve of the Electoral Commission to remain strong despite all the challenges, to remain firm and stand for the country. I also think that even when the president considered defeat, and the conciliatory messages we are also hearing from the winning party, is basically a result of the hard work that was done underground. A lot of people across Nigeria and around the world wouldn't know the kind of hard work that was done in working on these people, their party, their psychology, and trying to prepare them for this particular day. There has been a series of engagement with the President Jonathan, and series of engagement with General Buhari, preparing them for this particular day, that should this election come not in your way, this is what we expect from you. And they have all signed to that commitment. They did the first one and they renewed it again, committing themselves to peaceful election and agreeing to concede anytime if at all they lose the election. And this actually was done by Nigerian citizens and by our friends, our neighbors, our friends from different parts of the world who have supported this process. So what we received yesterday from these people is a simple reflection of the hard work that people have done. It is unprecedented. Nigerians are very proud. We are very, very proud. And we are feeling up again that our country is being recovered. It is too early to celebrate, but what Nigerians have shown is that their vote can count, and that if this APC or Buhari didn't do well, it is 4 years, another 4 years time, they will have the opportunity to send him packing if he doesn't do well.
All right, let me put it to Julia Wono now. This importance of civil society playing a major role. I saw that Nigerian stock market surged this Wednesday, and it was not so much an endorsement, it seems, of Muhammadu Buhari, but of Nigeria's institutions.
Absolutely, and I want to thank Mr. Abdu for what he reminds is that at the center of all this, there are citizens who are the main actors of this election. And I think we can take three lessons, political lessons from this election. The first one is that African heads of state have to stop being afraid of their citizens. I mean, they're not the danger. I mean, they are the progress. And I think that's important to highlight. We don't say it enough. The second lesson I think we can take from this is that when the opposition, there is a tendency in a lot of African countries of, a dispersed opposition with, everybody claiming leadership to take over the incumbent president. But I think that, as Mr. President Goodluck said, what's more important is beyond the personal ambitions is the interest of the country. And I think it's also a lesson for opposition parties in African countries. And the third, I think, lesson, which is important to take here, is that we have to go beyond the spree and recognize that finally also what has won here is conservatism, because as you've said, President Buhari is also a military, as Prince Wendy said earlier, is the people needed, someone who can run the country, who has proved that he can run the country with an iron fist sometimes to tackle issues. I'm not in favor of saying that African countries need strong men. I think we have to go beyond that. But it is true that in while facing adversity and while facing danger and while facing huge challenges such as security, economy, corruption, the ones we've talked about, we need someone who has a clear vision and also who is able to, shout when needed to shout.
Are you saying, I want to pick up on that point you made about leaders shouldn't be afraid of their citizen. Mike Olajide, today, Buhari saying, good luck, Jonathan, has nothing to fear from me. However, when the new administration comes in, if it does transpire that people in President Jonathan's administration have misused funds, how much of a crackdown should there be?
No, I think saying that he has nothing to fear does not mean if you commit crime, you have to be punished for it. I think what this means that there will be no hunting for people just because they're in the opposition. President Obasanjo was in power many years ago. He's still alive today. He's still doing fine in business. But if you commit something, then if you have something, there's a lot of corruption. So if we find somebody guilty embezzling millions of naira or dollars, then we have to go after him or her.
All right, and Julie mentioning there that Muhammadu Buhari, for him, it's his second incarnation as head of state. The 72-year-old former general headed a junta in the mid-1980s that cracked down on corruption, but also cracked down on dissent, with many killed or jailed at the time. The winner of last weekend's vote, though, insists that the past is the past.
As has already been announced, the Supreme Military Council met
that will serve and govern, but never rule over you.
He said he will serve. He will serve, but never rule over Nigeria. Emmanuel Iga, is the past, or should we be reminded of who was General Buhari in the 1980s?
I think there is no other way. The past is the past. We don't have a military regime in Nigeria anymore. It's long gone, and I don't think the military are even thinking of coming back into politics or things like that. No coup d'etats. Nigerians are at peace with this kind of thing. What Buhari has been saying, I have turned the page. I've learned the lesson from my past. And I'm a true convert to democracy. I think he has proved it. This is the third time he's attempting to run for presidency, and he has made it this time. So that's. Then we should also be looking at the institutions. Nigeria has a central government led by the president. Nigeria has a very strong Senate. We have a strong House of Representatives, a bit structured like the United States. So decisions can't be made by the man at the helm of affairs alone. The president can't just wake up and say, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that. Some people say, oh, Buhari is going to bring Sharia law to Nigeria. I don't see that happening. How do you get it voted in the parliament? It's not possible. So there are lots of checks and balances, and I think Buhari does understand that very well. I think he has come this time to try to cast his name on the stone of history. He has 4 years to do that, at least for his first term. Like they said, if he doesn't make it, then the population will quickly remind him that he made promises which he should have kept in 4 years' time.
Lots of checks and balances, but the institutions are strong up to a point. Prince Randy Kosu Alam Sogan, glaring is all the Nigerian oil money and all the Nigerian oil that actually goes stolen. We're talking about billions of dollars worth.
To be more precise, trillions of dollars have been embezzled in mismanagement of oil revenues, in mismanagement of public funds. A lot of people get away with it because nobody pursues them for it. This is what I call heavy corruption. It's not the corruption of the policeman who's getting the same pay as a house cleaner here in France. that's taking an extra $200. That's not corruption. Corruption is when you have a budget allocated to build affordable housing and half of the money goes into somebody's pocket. When you have a new hydroelectric plant to build, to invest in, and half of the money goes into somebody's pocket. And yet we have barely 30% of power coverage in the whole of Nigeria. The entire country of Nigeria has the same power generation as New York City. This is absolutely unacceptable. In a country with 180 million people, the powerhouse of Africa, where there's so much unemployment, government should really start to be tougher. Mr. Buhari should start to be tougher. I don't want to use the term iron fist, but I would say the term being more disciplined and really having a team that checks and double checks and triple checks public spending. And we can see now there's a huge lesson from the drop in oil prices that Nigeria is the first producer of oil in Africa. And because of the drop in prices, there's so many public expenditure that has been cut. So Nigeria needs to, if I were, I like to call him also General Buhari, if I were General Buhari, I would bank on diversifying the Nigerian economy. Invest back in agriculture, build power plants, develop the service sector, the telecoms, create more entrepreneurship, startups, incubators, because there's a lot of talent in Nigeria. There's a lot of inventors in Nigeria who are still in the benches in the schools. So Nigeria needs to start diversifying its economy in order to survive and work, most of all, take lessons from other similar African countries that heavily depend on oil and gas, such as Algeria, Angola, Sudan, and come together, come up with a strategy on how not to depend on just one resource anymore.
In the meantime, and I'll put it to you, Hussaini Abdu, some are predicting that he'll have a new problem on his hands now that it's no longer someone from the oil-rich southeast who is in power, that we could see a return of separatists or banditry in the southeast who will be tapping into that, trying to tap into that oil money at the source.
Yeah, of course, there have been that narrative, and there is that fear in the country. It's part of the conversations going on, even among us of civil society, that is possible. But anybody who has been a very good observer of the state of the nation, you will actually understand that the banditry, the militancy in the Niger Delta has not stopped in any way. There has been massive investment of resources, the bribing of young people, allocation of different oil contracts to them just to make sure they keep down their arms. But that didn't happen because the whole region has become a new political economy that depends so much on oil stealing and corruption. And that itself is informed by the character of the government that sustains it, because the government is not interested in fighting it. The government is not interested because a lot of people in the government are also beneficiaries of that chain of corruption and sharing of national spoil that they have in that area. So what a disciplined government will do is to find a better mechanism to deal with the young people's issue in that area, creating job opportunity for these people, ensuring that oil companies are held accountable, ensuring that the environmental issues in those areas are properly managed.
Hussaini, is that realistic? Hussaini, can it be done? Is it realistic to think that that's going to happen?
Yeah, it's going to happen because it depends on the plan. Nigeria has had two major investments in that area. One, a special ministry has been created called Ministry of Niger Delta, but completely it has refused to function. You have the Niger Delta Development Commission, which is an institution that has also been set up to respond to the peculiar issues in the Niger Delta. So what you needed is to work on these institutions, ensure a proper discipline, work with young people, give them the space to engage their communities and their society, bring them in, let them be part, not bribing them, not giving them oil contract, not giving them security contract. Once you do those things and they begin to benefit materially, they will think that the only way to get money is to carry arms against the state. So there can be a different approach to this issue. But for now, it's a major fear that people are having. We are very concerned about it, but we have not seen any sign that that will reemerge. But it's a major fear.
Do you share the optimism, Emmanuel Iga, that it can be done? That
with a strong man at the head of the government, yes, it's possible. It
would be unprecedented.
Yes, but you see, Buhari is from the north. I don't think that is going to be a challenge for him to change the course of things in the Niger Delta. It was a president from the north that actually brought kind of peace to the Niger Delta, brought the Niger Delta militancy to rest, at least to some level, even though the banditry Abdul is talking about is still kind of there residually. It was Umaru Yar'Adua, Musa Yar'Adua, that proclaimed amnesty and put all these mechanisms of development in place. And all. So I think what is going to happen in the Niger Delta is in the next few months, they are going to try to see how Buhari is going to take the issues of the development of the Delta region. The problem is not the resources going there. The problem is the way these resources have been used or misused by these institutions that Abdul talked about. It's a matter of changing the way things function in that region. Then let me also say that I think yesterday or today, the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta, one of the strong militancy movements there, apparently has sent a congratulatory message to General Buhari, welcoming him to govern Nigeria, etc. And I think that's a good move. The MEND, which has sent this message, is not the only movement there, but I think the other movements there will also be more interested in how things are going to happen when government sits down than start anticipating some difficulties with the government and probably trying to bring their guns back to the streets. I don't see that happening very soon.
All right. So definitely, in any case, from what you're saying, a honeymoon period that's to be seized upon.
Which the government has to take advantage of.
Emmanuel Iga, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well Prince Randy Kusu Alam Sogan, Mike Olajide, as well as Julia Wono, Husseini Abdu for being with us from Abuja. Stay with us. Our Media Watch segment is next.
Hi, folks. It's on the...
And let's say hello to James Creedon. James, nice to see Nigeria get the above-the-fold front page of the French broadsheet of record, Le Monde.
Absolutely, and indeed in France, in the UK, and across Europe, and in the African press, it's been one of the major headline stories today. Starting with a newspaper in Burkina Faso, Le Pays. A first in Africa, the opposition gets rid of a president using the weapons of the voting booth. That's how they're putting it.
We all know what happened in Burkina Faso with the president trying to lift term limits and being forced out by the street.
That's right. So indeed, Le Pays quite impressed by how well the election went off. Courrier International here in France, their headline is just quite simply that the fact that this is the first time since democracy came to Nigeria in 1999 that we've seen a democratic change of power. Elsewhere in the Nigerian paper Punch says that this is really a victory for the Nigerian electorate, and they point out that really the successful way in which the election took place, the lack of violence, is really it's the Nigerian people who are the biggest winners in all of this. A word of warning in another Nigerian paper, Vanguard, for the president, that really one of the first things to be tackled is corruption. This warning coming from a former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, and that is one of the most the top priorities to tackle for the incoming President Muhammadu Buhari. A warning there from the French foreign minister that Boko Haram, of course, is another serious priority for the incoming president, and so those words of warning are there. Chitra Nagarajan, writing for The Guardian, says that what I saw at the Nigerian polling booths was inspirational, and indeed Brits could Learn from it, Francois. So that's a nice reversal of the role in the finger-wagging stakes. Elsewhere, this political consultant, one of the hashtags that was most used on Twitter in terms of comments on the debate was Nigeria decides. Now, this tweet is in French, but he's saying, could this be the first phase of an Africa decides? Now, the point he makes there is, of course, massively varying political situations in countries across Africa, but what is common across the entire continent is a desire really for less corruption and for more change. That desire is common everywhere. So there you go, Francois. That's just a look at some of the comments on social media and in the press in Europe and in Africa.
All right, many thanks for that, James Creedon. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.